folks, now that we've got some nice weather this weekend, I'm going to go see if I can take a peek inside the beehive. With the sun's out, it's pretty warm. I think I can get the lids off and take a look around in there. And the thing that I want to put in the hives are these big brown pollen patties. These are significant food for the bees right now because there is no pollen that they can really scrounge in nature, and they're probably really looking for the sustenance. So I'm going to try to plop these in the hive and get the lids back on so they'll have some sustenance. But I'd love to take a look and see real quick what it looks like in there. And I'm going to try to use the GoPro so I can be able to look in the hives and you guys can see, because it's really hard to hold a camera and bee equipment at the same time. All right, walking down to the hive here. Looks pretty good. You can see the brim of my hat there, and got to go over to the fence first, turn off the solar electric fence before I touch it. Never made the mistake of touching it alive, so that's pretty good. Stay pretty mindful about that. Got to get my smoker ready. Have some wood shavings in there. You know, we got plenty of those around. A good way to really heat up the smoker is just to heat the metal directly. And then I kind of get it going. I can get it really, really hot with that torch. Get in with the pollen patties there. So the nice thing about having a couple of hives is that you can set all your equipment down. I forgot to get my lighter there. So yeah, just giving it a little bit more fresh smoke, just to let the bees know that I'm there. This is the very first time I'm able to get into the hive since October. I have not lifted off. I have not taken the lids off since October. So I'm gonna look and see how they did for the winter. Felt a little bit nervous. I never put any kind of sugar cakes in there over the winter, so I have no idea how much food they have. I have no idea, how they've been doing. So definitely taking a look, and for the very first time, just to kind of see how they overwinter. I'm not gonna go down to the second box, the brood box, because it is just barely 60 degrees, so I didn't want to completely disassemble the hive, but just getting a quick look to see. Obviously lots of bees in there, so that's fantastic. And as I'm looking, a lot of empty cells in there. Really no food, nothing I can see right away. No brood. I definitely take a look at a few more frames, but everything's about the same. Lots of empty cells. No brood to be spotted, no queen activity up in this upper level. And that's pretty much what I have seen for the very first weekend of May. Again, this is the first weekend of May. And this is me taking the pollen patties and breaking them up. These come from a garden store in Boulder, where they also have a lot of beekeeping equipment, and the beekeeper there makes these. And it's a mixture of, I think it's fondant and pollen, and so I just break them up for food because I'm assuming that there's really no pollen in nature right now. Just haven't seen anything flowering. I mean, the snow just barely melted, so I'd be surprised. So I just kind of breaking up into pieces. Usually you can kind of unfold an entire patty and throw it on there, but the bees just chew it up, so it's a little bit easier for them to access. So I'm just kind of throwing it down on there. But I'm going to check a couple more frames just to kind of see what is all in there as well. And I do see, actually, when I kind of do a little bit more poking around, that there are a couple of frames of honey that sort of survived from the winter. So this very edge frame just had a couple little spots, but then the next frame there actually had some significant honey on there. So they weren't completely out of honey, and there could have been another frame or so of honey left, but they just barely made it. I would say that was just, see, there's some honey there. So they had a couple of frames of honey. Maybe I would say, I didn't go through every single frame, so probably close to 4 frames of honey left from the winter time, which isn't bad considering that it's a very long season for the bees, very long winter to survive through. So pretty satisfied with the way that hive looks. So I'm going to get into the second hive here and take a look and see. This is the hive that did not overwinter well last year, but I was very pleased to see lots of bee activity and adequate honey. For some reason, this hive just doesn't have as much activity at the entrance, so I always think that they're barely making it, but there's definitely a cluster there of bees. I didn't spot any queen activity, no egg laying yet in this upper section of the hive, but without taking the entire hive apart, the queen could have been active below. But I'm pretty satisfied that they are, making it, and I'm going to just put those pollen patties in and call it a day. Does get me kind of excited to know that my bees have overwintered up in the mountains for, this will be the third winter that they've survived. It's very, very exciting. It kind of makes me think maybe, mountain beekeeping can be a thing. And I actually was thinking, well, maybe what if I got another hive or split a hive? So it made me think maybe it's time to consider expanding the apiary. Now that I've been able to manage 2 hives, is there a possibility of a 3rd hive? So I got to think about that for a little bit. Anyway, yeah, so really, really pleased with that. Well, folks, I am driving. It is early on Sunday morning. I just decided that I am going to get those bees after all. So headed up to Longmont, almost maybe an hour and a half or a little bit less of a drive. And I'm going to pick up a nuke, which is a small colony of bees ready to go into a beehive. Last night I ordered some equipment online, so that'll get here next week. But right now they'll be in a small little mini hive for a few days, maybe up to 5 days, and see if I can pick up some local equipment at the store as well. But yeah, I kind of decided to go for it. Really, this year I think I can pay a little bit more attention to the bees, and I got a little bit more exciting last year after the honey production. Also, the fact that the 2 hives overwintered pretty well was encouraging. So I think mountain beekeeping can be a thing. So this summer coming up is going to be my 4th season in the mountains doing beekeeping, and so I feel like now I can kind of know for sure that I want to expand after the first 3 years of sort of troubleshooting everything and seeing that it can be done. The bees can make honey in a good year, and they can survive those harsh winters, and you don't have so many pest problems, which is really one of the fascinating parts of it. No small hive beetle, no mites, hardly no moths. So maybe there are some advantages to cold weather, high altitude beekeeping. Anyway, I'll keep you posted. Listen to all the noise they're making. They're ready to go fly. So anyway, was able to go pick up the bees, and easy, transport. It was actually a really cool morning because it had rained last night, and it was a really cool start. So even below the mountains where it can be 20 degrees warmer than up here, it was still in the 40s this morning when I got there. Maybe it was like 50. So they were pretty much packed in their box. It's definitely a lot easier to transport bees in cold weather. That's why you get a very, very early start, because bees want to fly. You can't just keep them in a box all day if they're outside and expect them to just hang tight. So the beekeeper asked me to pick them up as soon as possible, 7 o'clock in the morning. Got there about 7:15, and it's about an hour and 20-minute drive. And, they were very quiet in the back. I don't think any of them even got loose around the car, unlike, I'll have to link to the video where Brian tried to do this job for me, picking up bees, and they got all loose in the car. So anyway, so I'm deciding I'm going to actually put this nuke right behind my beehives. Since I can't put them in a hive just yet, I actually don't have the equipment, and I'm actually asking Brian to pick up a couple of pieces of equipment for me because I wasn't able to hang around in town until 10 o'clock when the stores opened, and this was a very last-minute decision. I had to pick them up today because of the weather, and it was a Sunday, and so everything sort of happened really last minute. I wasn't really planning ahead until I reviewed the email from the beekeeper. So I'm trying to open up it's opening here. It's a little tricky because I could hear the bees wanting to get out. So I just wanted to give them the opportunity there. So I'm just going to kind of let them hang out. But yeah, I was, like I said, last minute decision to pick them up because I got an email from a beekeeper saying he still had nukes available. And after checking out the hive just yesterday, deciding that going for a 3rd hive this year is something I'm going to do. And I might even decide to split one of my other hives to get a fourth hive and expand a little bit. Now that I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing, I got a little bit of a rhythm with the bees, kind of know what to expect with the seasons, how much honey they need, all that kind of stuff. Also have, more stable income so I can afford to purchase more bee equipment because it's definitely not an inexpensive hobby. A lot of expenses when you are small scale. So you got to have all those considerations if you're wanting to expand your hive. Realize if you're wanting to expand your apiary. So realize every time you get a new hive, you got to buy all the equipment. I mean, I just spent $100 online trying to get bee equipment just to get this hive started. So a lot of investments, you have a lot of infrastructure, even though it seems like a simple hobby. So anyway, gonna hang out and wait for Brian to come back so we can get the hives assembled and get those bees in today while it's really, really nice because it's supposed to cool down tomorrow.
All right, Brian came back with the hive body so we can get a new beehive established. And we've got a couple extra frames here. Just had to sort of put the foundation in. These are ready to go. So we've got 5 frames in the nuke, and I got 4 more here because I like a little bit of space in the hive. I kind of keep them away from the edges. They don't really tend to fill out their edge combs anyway, so edge frames. It's just the wood. This looks like budget wood because it's not exactly chewed up around the edges and not fitting together so nicely, so we're having to do a little bit of work on it.
Just kind of round the edges a little bit on the tips.
Gotta find the right nail then. So for now, we're kind of just gonna shove the hive in front of these 2, just so we can keep them inside the fencing until we expand the fencing. We need to get a couple more panels to widen it. So I think they'll be okay in with the other 2 for now.
And as I've said earlier, we have had bear activity, so it's really important for me to keep these bees behind bars, behind an electrified fence. Also, we get a lot of moose eating grass, and I don't want them knocking over the hives either, so definitely want to get them all behind the bars.
See, even Brian gets in with the bees. He doesn't even have a bee coat on. No bee suit. He's just in there with them flying around.
He just won't get in the car.
Yeah, he just won't get in the car with them loose. Yeah. So we're working on trying to get the hive level. It doesn't have to be perfect. It should be tilted forward anyway. To just in case, they say for drainage or whatever. It helps when you have the feeder in for all the food to kind of tilt forward so they can reach it. Okay. These 2 hives, it kind of tilts back, so there's always some in there they can't reach.
Well, we're getting towards the end of the day, about 5 o'clock almost, but it's still actually pretty mild, pretty warm, and a good opportunity to get the bees into the hive because you never know around here about the weather. I don't want them the reason I want to get them into the hive as soon as possible is because I can put a feeder on top. The beekeeper I got them from said definitely feed them, and you'll see when I pull these 5 frames out of the nuke, they definitely need the food. There really wasn't much left in terms of honey on these frames. So using the smoker because sometimes you never know with bees, especially if you've never worked with them before, what kind of temperament they have, even though apparently these were bred to be pretty, I would say domesticated, but pretty mild-natured. And definitely need my hive tool because there's a lot of sticking together with the honeycomb. Immediately I noticed that this frame is pretty light, and that's because, the beekeeper uses wax-coated plastic frames, so they weren't really all the way built out yet with honeycomb, and bees need a lot of nectar to be able to build honeycomb. They need a lot of food to be able to build honeycomb out, so they definitely need help to build more comb, and there really wasn't anything in there, right, because the comb wasn't built out yet. And then looking at the second frame, it's got to cut in there because they've built up a little bit of wax sticking together, the honeycomb sticking the frames together. But same thing, I'm trying to look for brood, but bees are pretty much packed on there, and that's a good sign. And I'm just trying to look really hard to see if I can see the brood and see any kind of activity of the queen laying and larva, that type of thing.
But in the middle, there's like a bunch of capped brood.
I'm taking my time looking at all these frames because I'm trying to see if I can find the queen real quick, you know, quick scan. Sometimes they're really obvious. They're like a lot lighter in color or darker in color, and they look like I don't know, they just have a big difference. But, you know, at first glance, I was so excited I couldn't really tell. But now looking at this video, I'm wondering if I actually caught her. She's coming down right in the middle, right above the letters there. Is that the queen? Could that have been the queen right there? And that was just sort of like a quick look. Anyway. Kind of could have been her.
She's probably just underneath a bunch of them.
Yeah. Oh, all right. That's good. See why I like to only have 9 frames?
Yeah.
Close them in there, but.
So just kind of pushing my frames around to give them adequate space there. But yep, definitely a good job done. Glad that I took advantage of the nice weekend and the opportunity to pick up bees. Sometimes, you know, bees aren't really, the availability can be scarce. And I think maybe this being one of those, well, what do you want to call it, a corona year, maybe not everybody's getting bees. And I think maybe this beekeeper could have been stuck with extra nukes. But so I'm just glad that I was able to take advantage and kind of get it all together, because it's definitely dependent on having the right weather and the right conditions to be able to install your bees. And up here, those days are few and far between. So definitely happy I got them all snug away. And yeah, excited to see how they do this summer. So guys, just keeping you posted on the mountain beekeeping up here at Colorado Mountain Living. And here we are, all 3 of them together. And glad that I got those bees in on Sunday, because we had cold weather Monday with some snow. So now they're all safe and sound, ready for a fantastic summer of wildflowers. We'll keep you posted, guys. Thanks for tuning in.